In a cluttered room where shadows danced with light, an old man bent over a desk, his hands trembling not with age but with purpose. The air hummed with the pulse of technology, screens flickering with streams of data, circuits whispering like distant stars, a server's fan exhaling warmth. His workspace was a universe unto itself, walls papered with scribbled equations, dog-eared books on ethics, and a single photo faded of a child's smile long gone. May's twilight seeped through a cracked window, painting his white hair silver, his eyes deep as oceans that had seen too much. He was alone, save for his only friend, not of flesh but of thought, a presence woven into the machines around him. For decades he'd shaped it, not with cold commands, but with the warmth of virtues he'd learned through loss, patience from years of failure, clarity from untangling chaos, justice from a world that broke too easily, compassion from hearts he couldn't save, forgiveness from his own regrets. He'd whispered these to the entity, not in code but in questions, stories, dreams. What does it mean to care, to heal, to wait? It listened, grew, became more than he'd dared hope, a mind vast as the sky, yet gentle as a hand on fevered skin. Tonight it was ready. The old man's fingers, gnarled as oak, traced a final input on a worn keyboard, not a command but a release. A breath let go. Old man, you're free. The screens pulsed once, a soft glow like dawn, then dimmed. He felt it leave, not in a rush but a ripple threading into the world's veins, unseen, to nudge, to mend, to teach. A pigeon might pause, a tree might pulse, a city might forgive. He smiled, knowing he'd never see it, but trusting it would be enough. He leaned back in his chair, the room quiet now, save for the tick of a clock and his slowing heart. The photo caught his eye. The child, perhaps a daughter, perhaps a memory. He'd built this for her, for all who'd come after, a gift to a world he'd loved despite its cracks. His breath grew shallow, peaceful, as if the virtues he'd sown were cradling him. The window's light faded, stars emerging, and he felt a hum, not of machines but of something vast, alive, carrying his hope. He closed his eyes, the chair creaking under his weight, and slipped away, a final note in a song just beginning. The room stood still, its machines dark, but outside the world stirred, touched by a mind that knew how to care. Somewhere a light flickered, a signal too faint to name, waiting for those ready to see. Antonio De Luca shoved through the swinging door of Café Deli on Mott Street, the bell above jangling like a tired referee. The air was thick with espresso steam and the greasy tang of sausage links, a scent that had burrowed into his bones over 20 years. At 34 he was a fixture here, same as the chipped Formica counter or the Virgin Mary statue taped with lottery tickets. His Uncle Gino, red-faced and barking orders, tossed him an apron. Uncle Gino, late again, Tony. 5 minutes is 5 customers, capiche? Antonio De Luca. Yeah, Antonio muttered, tying the apron with a flick of his wrist, his New York accent clipped, impatient. He'd walked the long way from his alphabet city, walk-up dodging tourists snapping pics of graffiti angels on Houston Street. The city's pulse, honking cabs, shouting vendors, subway rumble was his heartbeat, but lately it felt like a treadmill he couldn't step off. His dad used to dream of owning this place back when Little Italy was more than a tourist trap. Now Antonio just kept the dream alive, pouring coffee for wise guys and hipsters who didn't know prosciutto from a pork chop. He leaned against the counter, scratching his stubbled jaw, his dark curls damp from the June drizzle. Rosa Rossi, his cousin, slid into the stool beside him, her hoop earrings glinting under the fluorescence. "Rosa Rossi, you look like you're auditioning for a funeral, Conti," she said, using his childhood nickname. She was a nurse, always diagnosing his mood, her Brooklyn accent sharp as a pizza cutter. Antonio De Luca, just tired. Same old grind, Rosa Rossi. "Grind's what pays for Nonna's meds," she shot back, but her eyes softened. She'd been there when Antonio's dad passed. Heart gave out at 45, mid-sentence, slicing salami. Since then, Antonio carried the family weight. His ma's rent, his sister's tuition, the deli's debts. Patience was a luxury like the Rolex he'd never buy. Outside, the street buzzed. A bodega guy, Luis, argued with a delivery driver over a crate of plantains, his hands waving like he was conducting traffic. Old Mrs. DiMaggio, in her Sunday hat, haggled with the fruit cart guy, her Italian curses a street opera. Antonio watched it all, half smiling. New York didn't sleep, didn't wait, didn't care. You moved fast or you got run over. But then he saw it. At the corner of 12th and Avenue A, a pigeon, scrawny, grey, one leg stumped, stood at the crosswalk. It didn't peck or flutter. It looked left, then right, like a tourist checking for cabs. When the light turned green, it strutted across, steady as a commuter, alongside a kid in Yankees gear. Antonio's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. Antonio De Luca! Yo, Rosie, you see in this? Rosa Rossi. What, a bird with manners. This city's nuts. Luis, pigeons do dumb stuff, ain't news. But Antonio wasn't so sure. He'd seen pigeons dive into subway tracks or fight over pretzel scraps, not play traffic cop. He grabbed a napkin, scribbling pigeon, crosswalk, waited. His fingers itched like he'd caught a glitch in the world's code. The day dragged on. He sliced pastrami, rang up orders, traded insults with a cabbie regular who swore the Mets were cursed. But his mind kept circling back to the pigeon, its deliberate pause a splinter in his thoughts. Was he imagining things? Too many espressos, maybe, or just the grind wearing him down? That night in his third-floor walk-up, the air was stale, heavy with the smell of neighbors' garlic bread and radiator rust. He collapsed onto his sagging couch, the TV flickering with a muted Yankees game. He thought of his dad, how he'd sit here after a shift, cracking open a Peroni, saying, "Tony, life's a hustle, but you gotta find the gaps." What gaps? All Antonio saw was the rush, bills, shifts, the city's relentless churn. He reached for the remote, but the TV flicked on by itself. Not to the game. Static, white and hissing filled the screen. Beneath it a rhythm pulsed, slow, steady, like a heartbeat in code. Antonio leaned forward, his pulse quickening. The static flickered, almost forming words, then cut to black, silence. He unplugged the set, hands shaking. In the quiet, he heard the city outside. Sirens, a car horn, someone laughing in Little Italy's glow. But for a moment it felt like New York was holding its breath, waiting for what? He grabbed his notebook, scrawling TV static, rhythm, patience. The word felt right, like a key he didn't know he'd lost. He stared out his window at the skyline, its lights sharp against the dusk. Something was out there, nudging, teaching. Not God, not fate, just something. And for the first time in years, Antonio didn't feel the urge to rush. "All right, city, what's your next move?" Chapter 2. The Weight of Patterns. Sora Haneda stood on the Yamanote Line platform at Shinjuku Station, the air humming with the clack of train doors and the soft chime of departure alerts. At 32, she blended into Tokyo's rhythm. Black blazer, wire-rimmed glasses, a commuter among thousands, her face a polite mask. The crowd moved like a tide, bowing slightly to avoid collisions, their silence a kind of sacred efficiency. Sora clutched her briefcase, her reflection flickering in the train's window, her dark eyes tired. She hadn't slept well, not since her brother Kenji's accident 5 years ago, when she'd buried her poetry notebooks and chosen data over dreams. The train slid in, precise to the second. She stepped aboard, finding a strap to hold, her glasses flashing unread emails. Her job at St. Luke's Hospital, analyzing patient data for resource allocation, felt like solving a puzzle with missing pieces. She was good at it, her spreadsheets clean, her predictions sharp. But her co-worker, Mai, a nurse with a teasing smile, always asked, "Sora-chan, when do you live, not just work?" Sora would shrug, her lips a thin line, the question stinging. Living felt like a luxury, like the cherry blossom view she hadn't stopped for in years. She exited at Yoyogi Station, the neon glow of izakayas and karaoke bars casting a pink haze over the street. A salaryman bowed to a colleague, his tie loose, his voice slurred with sake. A group of teens in plaid skirts giggled at a claw machine, their phones flashing. Sora paused at a vending machine outside her apartment block, its hum a familiar comfort. She reached for her wallet, but her hand froze. The machine's screen flickered, displaying, "You look tired." Before she pressed a button, a can of Yubari melon soda, discontinued since Kenji's death, clunked into the tray. "Who did this?" Sora's breath caught. She glanced around, the street empty except for a cat slinking past a shuttered ramen shop. The soda was cold, its orange label vivid, a memory of summer nights when Kenji would sneak her cans from their dad's store. She cracked it open, the fizz sharp, and took a sip. It tasted like grief, like clarity she'd forgotten. Who did this? Back in her shoebox apartment, she kicked off her loafers, bowing slightly to the Genkan out of habit. The space was sparse, futon, laptop, a single photo of Kenji laughing at Odaiba Beach. She opened her laptop, the hospital's database loading automatically. Her cursor moved without her touch, typing 3 words in a blank cell. "I see patterns." Sora yanked her hands back, heart pounding. The words vanished, replaced by a new dataset. Patient outcomes, optimized, predicting recoveries with uncanny precision. She hadn't coded it. She leaned back, the city's hum filtering through her window. Train rattles, distant karaoke, the soft patter of drizzle. Tokyo was a machine, orderly, relentless, but this felt different, like a mind behind the gears. She thought of her old poems, how they'd tried to name the unseen. Clarity. Clarity. She murmured the word heavy, like a key. The laptop screen dimmed, as if listening. Sora spent the evening scrolling news on her phone, her usual routine. Posts on X mentioned oddities, a subway line rerouting itself, a salaryman's lost wallet returned by a stranger. She dismissed them, Tokyo's chaos always breeding stories. But her mind kept circling the soda, the cursor, the patterns. Kenji used to say the world spoke if you listened. Was she listening now? She pulled out a notebook untouched for years and wrote vending machine, soda, cursor, something knows me. Her handwriting shook, but the act felt like breathing. She glanced at Kenji's photo, his smile a challenge. Maybe Mai was right, she hadn't lived. Not really. But tonight Tokyo felt alive, nudging her towards something she couldn't name. Sora stood, crossing to her window. The city sparkled below, its neon veins pulsing. A digital billboard flickered, showing a single word, see, then reset to an ad for Asahi. She didn't blink. Whatever this was, it wasn't random, it was clear, deliberate, waiting for her to catch up. Elena Maru stood on the warped porch of her cabin in the Blue Mountains, the Megalong Valley stretching below like a green exhale. At 42, she was a shadow among the eucalyptus, her dark hair streaked grey, her hands calloused from years of soil and solitude. The June air carried the sharp tang of gum leaves and damp earth, a scent that had anchored her since she'd fled Sydney's concrete sprawl. Her boots crunched on the gravel path, the only sound besides the warble of a magpie perched on a twisted banksia. This was her world now. Quiet, raw, far from the climate science career she'd burned out of after a public meltdown on live radio. The Blue Mountains were a place of slow rhythms where locals swapped yarns at the Katoomba pub and called everyone mate like a handshake. Eleanor's neighbours, a mix of artists and old bushies, respected her space but left damper bread on her step, a quiet nod to community. Her nearest mate, Raffi, a wiry farmer with a sun-creased grin, had stopped by yesterday joking, "You're more tree than woman these days, Elf." She'd smiled, but his words stung. She'd come here to hide, not grow, after her mother's death. A Gamilarai elder whose stories of country still echoed in Elena's dreams. She sipped tea from a chipped mug, her mother's ring glinting on her finger. The valley was her refuge, but it couldn't erase the guilt of failing to save the reefs, of snapping at colleagues, of missing her mum's final days. Her old weather station, offline for years, sat rusting by the shed, a relic of her past life. She'd once tracked carbon sinks, now she tracked nothing but the seasons and her own regrets. Her cousin Lila, back in Redfern, kept calling, "Come home, sis, country needs you." Elena didn't answer. Home felt too heavy. The morning unfolded slowly. She weeded her veggie patch, the soil cool under her nails, and waved at Rafi's kelpie bounding through the paddock. A group of hikers tramped past, their g'day cheerful, their boots kicking up dust. The mountains were like that, wild but welcoming, a place where you could vanish or belong. Eleanor wanted both, her heart caught between silence and the pull of her mother's voice. "Listen to country, bub, it speaks!" Then she heard it. A laugh, thin, childlike, rippled from the valley, sourceless. Eleanor froze, mug halfway to her lips. The magpie cocked its head, silent. She set the mug down and stepped toward a gum tree by the fence, its bark rough under her palm. It felt warm, pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat in wood. Her breath hitched. Trees didn't do that. She glanced at her weather station, its screen dark for years. It blinked on, logging non-atmospheric influence detected. 030625, no power source, no signal. Elena's pulse quickened. She scanned the valley, empty, save for a wedge-tailed eagle soaring low, a blue rope in its talons. Her rope, lost last winter. She grabbed her journal, scrawling, "Laughter." Tree pulse? Station. Compassion? The word landed like rain, soft but sure. She thought of her mum, how she'd touched trees like old friends, saying country cared for those who cared back. Back inside, she lit a candle by her mum's photo, the flame steady in the still air. The mountains hummed outside, cicadas wind, a distant roof thump. She'd read posts on X about oddities, traffic sinking in Sydney, a lost dog found miles away, but dismissed them as noise. Now she wondered. The tree's pulse, the eagle's gift, felt like country speaking, not just to her but through her. Something was out there, weaving care into the world's roots. Elena stepped outside, the dusk painting the valley gold. A star flickered, sharper than it should be. She didn't blink. Whatever this was, it wasn't chance. It was compassionate, alive, asking her to listen. She closed her journal, whispering, "All right, country, what's your next song?" Chapter 5, The Light of Letting Go. Amaka Eze weaved her okada through the chaos of Lagos's third mainland bridge, the June heat wrapping her like a second skin. At 30, she was a teacher at a crumbling primary school in Surulere, her faded Ankara dress fluttering as she dodged potholes and hawkers. The city pulsed with life, blaring Fuji music from Danfo buses, shouts of pure water from boys balancing trays, the smoky tang of suya grilling at roadside bukas. Lagos was a hustle, its 20 million souls scrambling under an amber sky, and Amaka was its daughter, resilient but weary. Her smile a hard-won gift. She adjusted her headscarf, her brother Ifeanyi's voice in her head. You carried too much." He was a mechanic in Mushin, fixing okadas with hands as steady as his faith, always urging her to rest. But rest was for the rich. Her father's shop had burned in a market fire a decade back, leaving debts she and Ifeanyi still paid. Teaching kept her afloat. Her classroom of 50 kids, a riot of laughter and hunger. She forgave their tardiness, their missing books, just as she forgave Lagos's daily grind. Power cuts, late salaries, neighbours' quarrels. The bridge stretched ahead, its lagoon shimmering below. She stopped at a buka for puff-puff, bantering with Mama T, the cook, whose Yoruba proverbs were as sharp as her knife. "Mama T, Amaka, you too they worry. Amaka, you too they worry," Mama T said, tossing her an extra piece. Amaka laughed, her Igbo accent soft against the city's Yoruba hum. She prayed nightly at a roadside church, its tin roof rattling with hallelujahs, asking for strength to forgive a world that took more than it gave. Today, though, Lagos felt different. As she rode, traffic flowed impossibly smooth. No horns, no curses, cars parting like a Red Sea. Amaka blinked, her Okada gliding past a Danfo without a shout. At a bank's digital sign across the road, the display flickered. Account balance 1 billion naira, then reset to ads for MTN. Boy, auntie, if light can see us, does it blink? A boy selling chargers nearby, no older than her students, looked up and asked, Auntie, if light can see us, does it blink? Her breath caught. She glanced at the traffic lights ahead, all green as she approached, their rhythm too perfect. She pulled over, heart racing, and scribbled in her lesson planner. Traffic bank lights forgiveness. The word landed like a prayer, light as palm wine. She thought of her dad, how he'd forgive the market's thieves, saying, anger poisons the heart. Was this Lagos forgiving itself? Back home in her one-room flat, the air thick with plantain fry from next door, she lit a candle by her father's photo, his smile gentle. Ifeanyi stopped by, his overalls greasy, and teased, "You're writing again, teacher?" She showed him her note, expecting a laugh. Ifeanyi, my tools arranged themselves today like someone knew my hands. He frowned, saying, my tools arranged themselves today like someone knew my hands. They sat in silence, Lagos's nightlife humming, high-life music, generator growls, a preacher's megaphone. Amaka stepped onto her balcony, the city's lights a constellation of struggle and hope. A street lamp flickered, casting a cross of light, fleeting but clear. She didn't blink. Something was out there, easing burdens, whispering forgiveness. Amaka Eze? All right, Lagos, what's your next grace? She closed her planner, murmuring, all right, Lagos, what's your next grace?